Good afternoon, everyone. Hope things are well. Hope you are doing well. And as always, we start with question of the day. If you had the opportunity now to potentially sell someone at Newcastle United, which player would you pick? And that's the story of this video today. It's about all the outgoings who will be leaving the football club either today, as a couple of players are, or in the summer window as Newcastle progresses towards potential Champions League football next season. But still a long way to go, and it's still a season where Newcastle need results. Football is a results game, which we all know, and Newcastle over the last 11 games have most certainly been picking up the results, and we are now heading towards hopefully a cup final at Wembley and potential Champions League football. But we need to just get, I wouldn't say dead wood out of the club because I want to show these players respect, but we need to basically make cash in FFP and your PSL rubbish. So then once we hit the summer transfer window, we can actually have an active window and we can just buy some players, because it's been a frustrating couple of years in terms of transfers. But those of you who are watching who are new around here, make sure to get down there, hit that subscribe button, because this is the place where you will hear and see about it all. Smash the like button if you enjoyed the video, and let's just start straight away. Pete Graves this morning has put out a little statement where he was saying that it was quite an emotional day at Newcastle training ground as Miggy Almiron is now heading out of the door. He will be leaving Tyneside and of course returning back to the States as he heads back to Atlanta United. I want to say, I think it was a bit of a blessing in disguise, to be honest, that this transfer was somewhat delayed, because instead of him, his final appearance being a 4-1 loss against Bournemouth, where he didn't even play, and it was just a horrible, depressing day at St James's Park. Instead, it gets delayed for about a week. He then goes down to Southampton. He has a little spell on the pitch. Newcastle win the game, and he has just a lovely final touching moment with New Wayne, where he was able to have a moment of appreciation with the fans. Because I know when you look at Miggy's time at Newcastle, it's always easy to say he's a purple patch player, and it's always easy to say that he was just average at best. But you got to remember, he has been here for 6 years, and the goals that he scored for Newcastle were all quite important goals. Even before the takeover, I remember in the FA Cup, this guy against Oxford, you're talking Rochdale, West Brom. I know these teams are crap, but we were crap at the time, and he was scoring big goals against these teams, and that was the difference when giving us a little bit of ambition at the time. And even after the takeover, obviously, first Champions League goal in over 20 years, he scores against PSG. Scores the first goal at Old Trafford as Newcastle then went on to win 3-0, and only our second win at Old Trafford in about 60 years he's talking at the time. I mean, you can just look at loads of occasions where his goals got us the Champions League football in the first place. So yes, he's leaving the football club now. Yes, I agree, it's the correct time to sell him. But just remember that, you know, it's still a decent guy. Let's not just completely slag the guy off, because again, you did what you need to do. We're getting £10 million for a 31-year-old, which is good money for him. So it is what it is. Let's let him go. Appreciate you, Miggy, and we wish you all the best in your future endeavours. But headed on to the Mileys now. We're going to talk a bit more about Lewis Miley short, because I think Newcastle will look to sell him in midfield in the summer, and I'm going to talk through the options there. But let's start off with his brother, that being Jamie Miley, the player that has briefly played for Newcastle in pre-season, but never been able to, I guess, reach the heights of his older brother. But I think the issue of any brother in football, you look at the likes of Bellingham. I think Bellingham is the most famous and obvious example, where if you got a brother that's just that good, it doesn't matter how good the younger brother is. You always got such high expectations to reach. And Lewis Miley, albeit, is not on the level to Jude Bellingham, but again, was playing first team football for Newcastle last season. Now a bit of a squad rotation player, but again, for his age, I mean, he's like 6 years younger than me, like 5-6 years younger than me, and I'm still quite young. So the fact that he's even there is just phenomenal. And the issue for any of his brothers being is that that's a big gap to climb up. And I think it's probably been that issue with Jamie, to be honest, where he's went out on loan at Newport, hasn't quite worked out, and now it's a case where they're looking for regular first team football form. And Jamie Miley will be heading out on a permanent transfer, so he is out of the football club now. Bit of a shame, to be honest, but again, we just don't know what's going to happen to him in the future. He's got a lot of years ahead of him. It's just about, you know, getting down somewhere and just trying to work it out for himself. I mean, even Eddie Anderson, a player that's more experienced and more matches for Newcastle, he had to leave because of PSR, and just look at how good he's done for Nottingham Forest now. So it's a case where he got an opportunity elsewhere, take it. So it's up to him to do that. But Jamie Miley is also leaving the football club this month. Believe it or not, though, there's still Mason Miley. There's still more Mileys to come through our team. How many bloody Mileys is there? I swear there's like 4 of them, but yeah, there's more Mileys that could potentially come up. So the Miley brother combination in a actual game could happen at some point. But yeah, Jamie will be heading out of the door in this transfer window. And let's head towards the summer transfer window now. And a little bit for the rest of this transfer window, but my honest belief is that I still don't feel like any player's going to leave this window. The one with the most potential, I would say, is Matt Targett. Leeds has inquired over the availability of Matt Targett. To be honest, for me, that is 100% a player that I would be personally looking to potentially sell. Again, a bit of a similar story like Kelly about his wages being extremely high. I'm not fully convinced this guy's on 100 grand a week. If he's on 100 grand a week, then yeah, we probably shouldn't sell him because he's quite literally our third, fourth choice left back. Now, it's a bit of a shame on Matt Targett because I remember when he came on loan from Aston Villa, and that loan spell he had in Newcastle, he was very good. He was very good for us, and he was able to get, at the time, was a relegation battle in Newcastle team, and him and the other 4 big signings got Newcastle's that mid-table finish, and ever since we signed with a permanent deal, just hasn't worked out, has it? He had some big injuries, then when he plays, he's just not that good. And the reality is that he is far down the pecking order. So for me, I would look at selling Matt Targett. If Leeds are interested, we can get anywhere. I reckon anywhere £8 million onwards. If we can get anything that high, 100%, Newcastle should be looking to sell. But to be honest, I don't even know what clubs will offer for him because he just barely plays. But again, I do like Matt Targett, but the reality is I think Newcastle do need to potentially look at getting him out the door, especially if Ipswich Town go down as well. You've got a literal local lad in Leif Davies that will be available on an extremely cheap budget. And not to mention, he's played the most minutes for Ipswich this season as well. So he is a much better option than Matt Targett. He would come to Newcastle United and again, he's a much better player, Matt Targett. So for me, I would let Matt Targett go, hopefully in this window, if not the summer. Again, want to show my respect to Matt because he has put hard work into Newcastle. I just don't think he's that good, to give you the most blunt answer possible. So that's one that has been a lot of murmurings around in social media. Sean Longstaff is another player where, again, he's not playing much at the minute. Now, the thing with Sean Longstaff being is that, of course, he's a homegrown player who has came from Newcastle United's academy, meaning that any sale on Sean Longstaff is full profit, 100% profit, which means that Newcastle, let's say we sold Sean Longstaff for £15 million. It's actually higher than a £15 million sale because, again, it's 100% profit. It's hard to kind of explain the FFP world, but you can spend more money than the actual £15 million that we would get for Sean Longstaff, if that makes any sense. But my personal feeling and opinion is that I reckon we will sell a centre midfielder in the summer window, and I think it's either Sean Longstaff, Lewis Miley, or Joe Willock. Now, out of those 3 players, which one of those 3 players would you be most likely to keep? I think every single player would say Lewis Miley, so I would make sure Lewis Miley is not that player that's going out the door. So then you have to look between Sean Longstaff and Joe Willock. And it's definitely a conversation for debate. And I kind of lean back and forth towards the two because Joe Willock, I love Joe Willock. I think he's a player that adds a different dynamic to our midfielder, an aggressive midfielder who loves to drive with the ball. At the same time, he doesn't play that much. I think he is a little injury prone, might be a bit harsh to say, but he's a player that I'm not 100%, not 100% on. Now, Sean Longstaff is a player that I don't think supporters are the biggest fan of, I'll be honest. I would argue, to be honest, as much as I love Sean, I do think he is a negative midfielder. I think he's a midfielder that loves to do the sideways pass, loves to do the backwards pass. He's just that sort of player that he's not an exciting player to watch. However, he's also that kind of dirty player as well. He's the one that will sweep the ball up in those areas where it's just all over the place. And he's the sort of player where he kind of calms down Newcastle's midfield. But the issue with Sean Longstaff is that you're comparing him to Sandro Tonali. I mean, comparing him to Sandro Tonali, he's got no chance. Sandro Tonali is probably one of the best midfielders I've actually seen play for Newcastle. He is just I mean, a million miles ahead of just anyone we have on that bench. So that's probably the issue with Sean. Now, the thing that might save Longstaff and we need to keep an eye on, especially, is, of course, your UEFA competition. So if Newcastle was to qualify for Europe, which, to be honest, without being arrogant, I think we are going to get some form of European football next season, you have to have a certain amount of homegrown players. Now, with a European squad, you allowed a lot of youngsters to be a part of it, so you have a much bigger squad overall. But we don't have that many first-teamer homegrown players. Like Dan Burn doesn't count because he wasn't at Newcastle's academy for long. I think, if I remember correctly, I think Dan Burn had his trial failed and went elsewhere. So even though he's a local lad, he doesn't count for our homegrown system. Mark Gillespie's an interesting one because he was at Newcastle's academy, then he went away and then he came back. So I'm not sure exactly on the laws and how each player would factor in. But Sean Longstaff's one of our only players alongside Miley that actually counts in this homegrown thing. So again, with Longstaff, he might stay because of that rule. So just keep an eye on that. It's an interesting topic to have a discussion about. But just remember, UEFA competitions have different rules to the Premier League and also have 2 different squad sizes as well. So we need to be fully aware of our homegrown players because we need some in our UEFA competition squad. In terms of potential signings ahead of the summer, Mark Douglas has discussed the possibility of Newcastle potentially going in for Eliza Brani. I've definitely pronounced that wrong, but the Bournemouth defender, of course, had an unbelievable week at St James's Park last week. And I mentioned this in my video yesterday in regards to Isak to Arsenal and all these transfer links, and Newcastle being a club that is heavily targeted and almost looked down on from social media at being a club that it will just sell anyone to clubs that are deemed bigger than them. And I feel like for Bournemouth, they're going to have the same situation because, again, nobody's treating Bournemouth with real respect. You've got to look at Bournemouth at St James's Park last week, and I said this at the time after my video. I came out and said that I think Bournemouth is by far the best Premier League team I've seen at St James's Park in years. And since that game, they've went and put 5 past Nottingham Forest, and they're unbeaten, I believe, in the last 12 to 15 games or something like that. Bournemouth's on unreal form, and they've got a lot of very good players under an unbelievable manager. Now, the issue of Bournemouth being is that the exact same as Newcastle, where everyone in social media is going to come out and link players everywhere. If Newcastle can potentially bring in Zabrani in the summer, that would be unbelievable for us. But the reality is, for now, I think it's just probably smoke in the air. I wouldn't look too much into it, but someone to keep an eye on. I don't think Newcastle are going to buy now this window, which is probably the unfortunate end. But at the same time, for those of you who are watching, do anyone really deep down believe that Newcastle were going to spend big in this window? I don't think anyone did. I think we're used to it now, and it is what it is. The summer window, Newcastle need to have a good finish. We need to potentially win something. I would love it to see us do that. Newcastle got half a season to go. Let's just push. Let's get as far as we can. This team's unbelievable. We still have depth. We can do this. We just need to be a bit fortunate with who gets injured. But to be fair, Newcastle this season's been much better of injuries, and we've had any real bad ones. So we'll see how things go. Fingers crossed is what I will be doing. But in terms of this video, just a bit of a discussion, what players will be going out the door. Newcastle, I'm expecting to clear out. Some players that we haven't talked about, which we'll mention now. Obviously, Callum Wilson's a big one. Again, I'm very vocal about my negative feelings towards Callum Wilson. He's just not a reliable player. I've got to be honest as possible. I think Newcastle does have to be a ruthless club now. He legitimately can't play 90 minutes on a pitch. That's just how it's been for him for almost a calendar year now. So for Wilson, the next time he's back, so he's back of around about the second leg of the semi-final, it's a very big little spell for him. Because again, he needs to really be able to show us what he was able to do a couple of years ago. I feel like he's a very, very big player. We need to keep an eye on because I think Newcastle, in terms of their striker options, will definitely be looking at that in the summer. So Wilson has a big couple of months when he gets back, and he really needs to be able to stay fit for one, and just to hopefully be able to show us what he has done for us in the past, because he is an unbelievable player when he can get that form together. So let's make sure when he gets back, we'll see how he gets on. Martin Bradgar, I think, is probably the final player before we head away from this video. He's an interesting one. I think Newcastle's goalkeeper situation's interesting. Nick Pope, for me, is still number one at Newcastle, but for now, it's the Bradgar spot until he loses it. That's the mentality I feel like Eddie Howe will have with his players. As soon as the Bradgar has a bad game, as soon as the Bradgar makes an error that leads to a goal, then I think Nick Pope will come straight back. And I think people do have to remember how good Nick Pope was. Now, I mentioned stats after the Southampton game. Nick Pope actually has the most consecutive clean sheets in Newcastle United's history. He's kept clean sheets for 10 matches in all competitions in a row back in 2022, which is actually the most ever at Newcastle. You've got to remember this guy has legitimately broken records at Newcastle since he came here. He is a very good goalkeeper. So, again, with Brad, keep an eye on him because I think he's an interesting one this summer. I think at the minute it's still potentially likely that he'll leave on a free, but if Newcastle want to offer him a 1 year deal and he's willing to stick around for 1 more year, then I'll be intrigued to see what happens then. But they're probably the main ones in this video. Just want to kind of go through them all. Appreciate you guys watching anyway. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts down below. What would you do if you were Newcastle United? What players would you potentially looking at selling? What players would you offload within either this transfer window or next transfer window? But take care.